with Vincent and Yolanda. So take a little time to look at this one, and then we can talk through it together just the same. This is a point of issue question, of course, and so the two parties both express opinions on a particular topic, and those opinions differ. So one would say yes, the other would say no. Anyone have a good general pre-phrase or want to give it a shot as to what they think is going on here? So we got Colin saying scientific discipline can be measured. I think that's excellent. So can things be measured or not? Vincent's saying happiness is subjective, cannot be measured. So they're saying that if something is subjective, it cannot be measured. So if it can be measured, then it's not subjective. So it's scientific. I think that's a good way to talk about it. And then is there a choice that relates to this, of course? I think this one's a particularly difficult one. We've got Vincent saying measurements must occur in science and happiness cannot be measured. Then we have Yolanda saying this is a good general paraphrase, I'd say, of the stimulus, which you want to do. You want to put it in your own words. You want to make it relatable. You want to relate it to yourself, ideally in your own thought process. So no scientific discipline can study something that cannot be measured. So if it can't be measured, science can't study it. So you could even type that out if you want to. I don't think you need to, but not measured, then not the science, so it's not science study. So if science can study something, then it must be able to be measured. Happiness cannot be measured since it's subjective. And then of course that means that happiness cannot be studied by science. Yolanda says, gives an example of optometry, which Vincent did not talk about. So I'm looking over here. Yolanda then provides the example of optometry relying on subjective reports. So optometry is an exception to this, essentially, or Yolanda disagrees with Vincent. And then the student says, Yolanda disagrees with Vincent, exactly. So the student then prephrases and says they disagree over whether science can deal with something subjective or not. And we have exactly that. And Colin in the chat also talked about science measuring things versus science dealing with subjective things. And we have a choice that, of course, says that straight out, which is C. And you're not even going to have to bubble this on the digital LSAT because you'll just be able to click it and you'll be good. But anyway, yes, so C is the correct answer. And the student says at the bottom here, C is correct because we can then conclude that Vincent does not believe that science can rely on subjective reports and would thus disagree with Yolanda's claim. Yolanda says that they can rely on subjective reports, such as in the case of optometry. So this is perfect. A, the student eliminates A, saying Yolanda does not mention happiness. Exactly, happiness. Well, Yolanda does mention happiness, but she's making claims about optometry. So I think whether happiness is subjective or not, they're both talking about happiness, but do they disagree over happiness? Do they disagree over happiness? They're actually both seem to say happiness is subjective. Happiness subjective. Happiness research relies on subjects' reports, which of course is subjective. So I think they actually both agree on A, and I'd eliminate it for that reason. They certainly don't disagree on it. With regard to optometry, the student, though, is correct. Vincent does not discuss optometry. That's excellent. Yeah, Vincent does not discuss optometry at all. He only discusses happiness, so B is out for that reason. Looking at C, of course, we already talked about that. The student had already kind of pre-phrased it, so that was solid, totally good. Yolanda believes optometry is subjective. Yes. Vincent believes science requires measurement, but subjectivity cannot be measured. Excellent. D, happiness research is as much a scientific discipline as optometry is. In terms of a relative comparison between the two, I don't think they're making a claim like that. Yeah, Yolanda's never discussing whether happiness is as scientific as optometry. That is correct. She's saying just as optometry, happiness. Surely optometry is scientific. So there's an implication that it is just as good, but Vincent's not even making the outright claim about optometry. So I think that we can eliminate D for that reason alone. Then looking at E, experiences that cannot be measured are entirely subjective. That's a bit strong, first off. And then, so I don't love that. I think that they're not really making claims in that way. I think Vincent is, but Yolanda is not making a claim like this. And then in terms of the student saying about a mistaken reversal in Vincent's belief, the student diagrammed this. I'm not sure that you necessarily need to diagram, but again, I did make my own diagram up here just to illustrate it for you all. So I could, of course, see it being useful here. Subjective measured versus measured subjective. Let's see. So if it's subjective, then it cannot be measured. So maybe this didn't translate well from the Word document where I copied it from. So I'm actually just going to say that maybe that wasn't what the student meant, and I'll write it on the side here. So if it cannot be measured, then it's subjective. That's what E is saying. And what did Vincent say? Vincent said, well, I'm actually mapping what Vincent said. So not measured, then subjective, subjective, then not measured. Exactly. So Vincent is saying subjective, then not measured. So yes, that is a mistaken reversal. So the student is correct in their analysis there. I think that it just didn't copy well from the document. But the question, of course, is here, is this the point at issue about which they disagree? And I don't think we can say that. I think that Yolanda's not even really talking about measurements in general. She talks about being subjective a little bit, but nothing more than that. So I would eliminate E as well. And of course, C is the correct answer here.